another center here somewhere in town. But I'm not sure. But I came straight from New York City to here at the invite of some people to come to talk about an organization that I founded in 1990 called the League of Indigenous Sovereign Nations. And when I came up, somebody up this way had seen a mission statement that I had wrote on the League of Indigenous Sovereign Nations. And basically what I had tried to do in 1990 was to advance what I believe to be the vision and the dream of a Huron prophet by the name of Teganawida, who united the 5 warring nations of my people, the Iroquois. I am a Mohawk, as you know us, but in my traditional tongue, in our traditional language, I am Ganangahaga, which means people of the land of the flint. But you know us as Mohawks. Now, the Ganawida came amongst our people, and we were warned with one another since in the 13th century AD. This is long before any Europeans traveled to this continent. The Ganawida was given the greatest of laws, the greatest constitution that has ever been known to human beings was given to the Ganawida at the age of 19 years old. He was a very powerful young prophet as well as a great political statesman. And what Teganawida was given by the Creator, by the great mind, was a blueprint for self-determination and sovereignty and a principle of political governing that was the epitome of the whole question of democratic process. For instance, from the Great Law came the concept of the 2/3 majority vote. From the Great Law came the concept of the people's referendum, which is being, as we're talking right now, which is being literally desecrated in British Columbia right now, the whole question of making treaties with Native peoples in BC. Then he gave the whole concept of women's suffrage movement happened with Native peoples in the Great Law. Because within our structure, the women in our nations, the clan mothers, hold a very powerful seat. They are equal in power. We are a matriarchal society, and the women in our society and within the Guyanagoa have the ability to install a chief because they know that he has a balance of spirit and mind and body. And he is willing to selflessly work for the interest of the people. So she has the power to impose a chief. And then if the chief, in the process of serving the people, begins to err in his duties, she also has the power to take the symbols of authority off of his head, the antlers, which is placed on his head when he is coronated as a peace chief or a Rorigani, which is a peace chief. She has the ability to order the war chief to take that symbol of authority off his head and depose him after 3 warnings. So in our society, even the concept of a national defense, because it must be understood that though we are that we believe that in any kind of conflict, nation to nation, we believe that the process of diplomacy through peace, power, and righteousness be executed to the fullest degree before any determination by a Grand Council of Chiefs would happen, and their war chiefs would happen before and after the war was commenced, when there was a foreign power violating the sovereignty of the people under the concept of the Great Law, living within the concepts of the Great Law. The whole concept of the U.S. and Canadian national defense was modeled after our war societies and our concept of national defense. And so much came from the Guyanagoa, and so much was in honor of the matriarchal society that I said that what happened within our nation is that there was a time when people moved amongst us that came to Christianize and missionize our people. And in the process of this missionization process, friends of ours and allies called the Quakers had come amongst us in the 1800s. And when they came amongst the Seneca, there was something that happened that was not correct at that time. When they came amongst the Seneca, what the Quakers did then, there was a guy by the name of Hansel who was called the Seneca prophet. But in reality, Hansel was not a prophet, he was an alcoholic. And what happened is that they had tried to put Hansel up as a prophet. And they were saying that he was having angelic visions, but in fact he wasn't having angelic visions, he was having DTs. You know. But he thought he was having visions of angels. And they were talking about heaven and hell. These are concepts that were not in our traditional way of understanding spiritual laws. So they put him up as a prophet because somebody maliciously was not doing something. Basically, what was happening is the Quakers were being used by the government at that time to try to disarm the Iroquois people and to try to deceive us about the ways of the Great Law. So what happened is they said that the Ganawida, when he walked amongst the Iroquois people, and to unite the warring nations, that when all of the warring nations got together, when he went nation to nation to establish the Great Peace, they did a symbolic planting of the Tree of Peace, and then underneath the Tree of Peace, they would take the weapons of war and bury it. Now they said, symbolically, while we're establishing the Great Peace under the guiding of the Great Law, we will bury our weapons of war against one another. But in the founding, in this ceremonies, these founding rituals, they said we would also know where to find those weapons if attacked from an outside foreign nation. Now what the Quakers did at that time is they basically said that the Ganawida, and they stopped using the prophet's name, because if you forget the prophet's name, you're going to forget what the prophet was about eventually. So what they said was, the Ganawida said, or the peacemaker said, since you bury your weapons of war, said to bury the weapons of war, there is no need for a war chief. And since there's no need for a war chief, might as well get rid of it. But what that was really all about, I believe, and so do many other people within the Confederacy, is what happened there was somebody was purposely saying, get rid of the guns, make it easy for the colonial foreign powers to come in and acquiesce the resources, the land, and take control of the people, to disarm the people in their territories. And what it basically was basically saying more so, what they were doing is they were undermining the power of women. And they were going from a matriarchal society, they were actually trying to install a patriarchal order. And what happened was basically this. Anytime a chief violated his commitment to the people, he was given 3 warnings by the war chief, and the clan mother would tell the war chief of each nation. She would tell him to go and tell the peace chief that he was erring in his ways. And if after the 3rd time he refused to amend his ways, she would depose him from his power, and the war chief was told to take him out, and he would be abandoned from the group, from the nation. He'd be taken and gone. This was the most ingenious method of bringing checks and balances against abuse of power and corruption in government. But when they took away, when they mistold the story of the founding of the League, the Confederacy, and what they basically did by saying is get rid of the war chief, once you got rid of the war chief, you took the power from the woman to order the war chief to go and to chastise and to give warning to the peace chief who was violating the trust of the people. And so therefore, we found this has created within the Confederacy sort of like a major split from something that was very pure and powerful to something that has very, very self-destructive if there is some level of intervention to stop that. So analyzing that had been analyzed by many people, and so there is, instead of going to a direct confrontation, what many of us decided to do was to formulate a League of Indigenous Sovereign Nations, and to go to all the different sovereign nations and to establish a league to consolidate our sovereignty as a people, and to try to begin to continue to fulfill the agreement that Anawita and Iowita, which is the Mohawk that allied with him, to go and show the great peace. And then when everybody in the league would accept the Constitution that was similar to the guy in Nagoa, and we, instead of getting into an internal confrontations, we would go from the outside and try to build back in and to restore the Great Wall. So in any event, what happened there is I then was asked to come up and talk about the league over here in Edmonton, and there was a conference that was going on about sovereignty. When I came up, we were talking for about 2 days, when all of a sudden I met my wife who come in from Meadow Lake with some elder Cree women from there, and I guess we were having a situation over here in Meadow Lake. And when she came down, I basically fell in love with this very beautiful Cree woman. And we just, well, we're 9 years together now. And since that time, I had also been a part of what was called a Sundance society. When I got out of prison, I had been introduced to the way of the Sundance of the Lakota Nation. A friend of mine, who is the son of the chief of the Piscataway Indian Nation in Maryland, he and I went out and started Sundancing with a guy, medicine man by the name of Crow. And we Sundanced at Crowdog's Paradise, and we Sundanced also at another place called Eagle Feather Sundance in South Dakota. So we started on the path of the Sundance, and while I was up here, I had to find a place to go Sundance again, to continue to do my commitment. So while I was living up here, we were living in Hinton, actually, up here in Hinton, Alberta. We started out in Saskatoon, and then we moved to Hinton, Alberta. And then from Hinton, Alberta, we ended up eventually going to British Columbia. Well, what happened first is that my aunt, my grandmother, by the way, her name was Rose Anderson. She was Cree Indian from Fort Capel. Now, and we've got a lot of relations, so I'm part Mohawk, part Cree. And we decided we were going to go over there to Regina because she married a guy by the name of Willie Pagan, who's a Sundance chief over there. There's an elder man by the name of Willie Pagan. And we were going to go over there in 1994 to see if I could Sundance with her, with her, my aunt, and Willie Pagan and the Cree Sundance over there in Fort Capel. But things happened. We went to visit, but my aunt would eventually die from diabetes. And so something happened and it got disrupted. So we couldn't actually Sundance that day in 1994, so we were told, I come back over here, and I had met a lot of people from the Shuswap, or the Shuswap Nation. One of the guys that I met from the Shuswap Nation was a guy by the name of William Jones, was his nickname, Ignace. And he would eventually be called, his Indian name would become Wolverine. Now, I asked Wolverine at that time if he knew any place that we could Sundance. And he told me that yes, there was a place in upstate or further up in the interior at a place called Gustafson Lake. But the Chippewa people call that lake Chapat, which means the big lake. Now, I went up there and presented tobacco to a person by the name of Percy Brissett and asked him to dance in 1994 there. They accepted my tobacco, and I, in fact, did dance in 1994, and it was a really, really powerful, good, strong dance. Now, the medicine man of that dance was a guy by the name of John Stevens from Morley, Alberta. He comes from the lineage